I remember back in elementary school, we would randomly get these early dismissal days every so often. I think that it had something to do with staff development or meetings or something like that. But as a kid, all it basically meant was we got out early that day. It wasn't quite a half day, but still an hour or two earlier than regular dismissal. I remember sitting quietly at my desk one of these days, working on some math problems, when the classroom phone rang and I turned to my friend. I made a joke and said, "Watch it be for me." We all stared at the teacher as she answered the phone because, let's be real, 90% of the time, when that phone rang, it meant someone was getting to leave early. But that's when her eyes met mine, and my joking stopped cold. I felt this weird jolt in my stomach. I remember being an anxious kid, so my mind immediately jumped to the worst case scenarios. Oh no, someone must have died. The teacher said a few things into the phone and then looked dead at me and asked, "Hey, when are you getting off the bus today?" It was a strange question, even to my 7 or 8-year-old mind. Mainly because my mom, who was my main parent at the time, knew when I'd be home, especially on those early dismissal days since she had to leave work early to meet me. Still, I just said, the normal time. The teacher spoke into the phone for a few more seconds and then hung up. When she walked by my desk, I asked her what that was about, and she told me that my parent had just called to double check what time I'd be getting off the bus. Again, weird, but I didn't think very much of it. I'm sure I was too concerned with recess or lunch at that point. Well, later that afternoon, I got off the bus and walked home like usual. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. When I walked through the front door, my mom greeted me and helped me take off my coat. She asked me how school went and what we learned, the normal parent spiel. That's when I casually asked her, "Why did you call the school to ask what time I was getting off the bus?" That's when her whole expression changed. She went visibly pale and told me, "I didn't call the school." I told her everything. The call, the weird question from the teacher, and how she said that it was one of my parents. That's when my mom went into panic mode. She started making all sorts of fast, frantic calls. And while she didn't say anything to me, I could feel in the air of the house that something was wrong. About 20 minutes later, my stepdad came home early from work. Then, not long after that, a single state trooper pulled up in front of our house. I was terrified at that point. I thought I had somehow done something wrong. But the officer sat down with me and calmly asked me a few questions. "Recently, when you've gotten off the bus, has anyone tried to talk to you? Have you seen any unfamiliar cars parked nearby? Maybe ones that don't have kids in them? Has anyone offered you a ride?" I told him no to all the questions. I hadn't seen or noticed anything suspicious. We lived in a quiet, older neighborhood, filled mostly with retirees. It never felt unsafe to me. After the questioning, my mom told me to pack an overnight bag. It was my dad's weekend for visitation. When he came to pick me up, I overheard the trooper grilling him with questions from the top of the stairs. My dad sounded as confused and concerned as anyone else. Eventually, I left with him for the weekend, and while we were together, my dad taught me a bit of self-defense. At the time, I thought it was cool, although clearly I didn't fully understand the context or what had nearly happened. Time went on. No more questions, no more updates. Life just went back to normal. And eventually, I forgot about the whole thing. Well, fast forward to today, I was listening to Lazy Masquerade on YouTube. He'll sometimes narrate creepy stories from Reddit, and something about his tone or the content itself triggered this memory deep inside the vault. I texted my mom to ask about it, and what she told me sent chills throughout my entire body. She said that she had learned that someone had called the school pretending to be my dad. Whoever this man was, he knew my full name, my dad's full name, as well as my mom's. He kept insisting that my mother couldn't get out of work in time and had asked him to pick me up at the bus stop instead. Apparently, the school never thought to call my mom to confirm. I now believe the only reason that I wasn't abducted that day is because I told the teacher I'd be getting off the bus at the normal time, which on a regular day would have been around 3:15, even though on this day, due to early dismissal, I had actually gotten home much closer to 1:45. By the time this creep went to find me, I was already home safe. I think that one nondescript answer likely saved my life. The more I've thought about it over the years, the scarier it's become. Because whoever that guy was, I don't think he was some random stranger. He knew too much about my family to just have stumbled across that information. It had to be someone who had been close to us at some point, either a family member or maybe a friend of the family. And that realization keeps me awake at night. Even worse, we still live in the same house. We still have the same extended family. And now I have a little brother who's roughly the same age that I was when all of this happened. I pressed my mom for more details, and after a long pause, she admitted something that she had felt in her gut for a long time. She's pretty sure that this was done by an abusive ex-boyfriend of hers. Now, apparently this guy was around when I was young, but I don't remember him at all, although I remember whispers about his name growing up. She told me that he had outright threatened her after their breakup, said in no uncertain terms that he was going to take me. She never thought he'd actually try, but she feels in her bones that he did. And the only thing that stopped him was a random twist of scheduling and a lucky answer from a very confused little kid. It's been years since that day, but I still get goosebumps when I think about how easily things could have gone differently. How I might not be here to tell this story. How close I came to being just another milk carton kid. Like I said, I don't remember this man. I wouldn't know him if I passed him on the street. But I know he exists, and I know what it is that he tried to do. This encounter took place not too long ago, and it solidified in my mind why I will always close the blinds at night, and why, even in a quiet suburban neighborhood, you should always lock your door. I've been reading creepy stories online since I was about 12, when I first discovered Tumblr and Reddit. Creepypasta, no sleep, and of course, let's not meet. So I have long since taken to checking all windows and locks before I go to bed at night, and closing blinds and curtains for fear I might look out to see some creep in a clown costume with a knife in my garden, or a child with their head held at an unnatural angle. I always sort of wished I had a creepy encounter, just so I could write about it. But if I never have another experience like this for the rest of my life, it'll be too soon. So, obligatory context. This nice suburban neighborhood, as I say, is home to my parents. Little town in Cheshire, England. Quiet street where we all know each other. Low crime rate, except one house which has been heavily burgled twice in about 10 years. Both opportunistic break-ins. Once because the keys were near the door and the invaders smashed a small pane to reach them before letting themselves in. The other time, they'd left their blinds open overnight, leaving laptops, wallets, and both car keys on full display. Anyway, I don't live with my parents anymore, but I was back in town and staying with them for a few days over summer. I was sat in the kitchen, which faces onto the street, and working on my laptop, just glancing up occasionally to watch people pass by walking dogs or strolling with a pram. I'd seen something moving in my peripheral, so, like every time, I looked up hoping to see a dog walker or one neighbor and her newborn grandson. But this time, nope. Two people, a man in a semi-casual suit and a woman in plain jeans and a blouse. But they were moving awkwardly. The woman had her head craned over to one of her shoulders, and her arm on that side was bent backwards and unnaturally held upward with her hand rhythmically flicking. Her other arm randomly but smoothly glided about, guided by her elbow. It was a bit like when you try to push two magnets together at the same point of polarity. That's the only way I can really describe it. I have friends with epilepsy, and I've never seen them contort or flick like that. Not even their myoclonic jerks. The man looked more like one of those dancing inflatables you see at a used car dealership. That's truly the only way I could describe his movements. They walked past my parents' house, and I instinctively called out to my cat, checking that he wasn't outside with those weirdos. I found him upstairs in my old room. He was looking out the window, and as I followed his gaze, I see two of the kid neighbors in the double-burgled house waving across to me. Well, to my cat, but I waved back all the same, and they were in their parents' upstairs bedroom window. I went downstairs to tell my parents about the strange moving people, and my dad just furrowed his brow, asked if they were gone, and said to double-check that the door was locked. I headed back to the kitchen to check on our back door. This door doesn't have any windows in it, so you can understand that I nearly jumped out of my skin when, as I put my hand on the door handle, it was pushed down from someone on the other side. I push on the door immediately, keeping it shut before anyone can push it from the outside. I also must have screamed because I hear my dad call back. I hear his footsteps coming through the house. Then I hear a loud gasp on the other side of the door and out of the kitchen window. Guess who I look up to see making a retreat? Both creepy moving dude and dudette. By the time my dad's made it through the house, they're gone. He doesn't seem to believe me, although he doesn't seem exactly doubting either. He says he's never seen them before, and takes a free pop at me for being discriminatory against potential house guests with movement disorders. We make jokes like this because I had a movement disorder as a kid, and one time, a parent wouldn't let me into her son's birthday party because they would be playing Simon Says, and I made it difficult for the other kids apparently. I digress, but at this point, these people were gone. Now, I don't sleep well, due to said movement disorder actually, and those scary stories that I read meant I always listened to the excessive creaking in this house and noises on the street outdoors at night, likely people walking home drunk, or foxes mating. Most of the sounds are quiet though, so imagine my shock when my straining ears are suddenly attacked by a child's scream. It takes me a second to locate the sound, and then another to lurch from my bed to the window, looking straight over to the upstairs window, the same one where not 12 hours ago, my neighbor's children were waving to me from. I scanned down the house and saw their front door wide open. I shouted out to my parents, hoping to wake them up as I flew down the stairs in my PJs, with 999 already dialed on my phone to report this likely home invasion before I do anything else. I'm remembering to scream fire, not burglar, as I now stride across the road, attempting to wake other neighbors and gather support en masse. There are 2 kids and a teenager in that commonly burgled house, kids who I babysat for 10 years, and one of them just screamed at 2 a.m. while their front door is wide open. I make sure to say this out loud to the emergency responder over the phone. As I near the door, I can see a figure moving inside, frantically. So after telling the phone responder what's happening and answering their brief set of questions, I shout into the door from a safe distance some phrases the police gave me to say. The police are on their way. We're right outside and we're getting help. Is anyone hurt? And to tell the intruders, we know you're in there. Please don't hurt anyone. The police can help you. I get a response from the upstairs window and step back into the road to see the mother holding all 3 kids in her arms. She tells me the middle child, who's 9, found intruders on the stairs when she went to get a drink in the night. The little girl, Imogen, tells me they're like clowns. Clowns? Now, this extra detail is the straw that broke the camel's back, and my vision darkens. Shit, I think I'm going to pass out. The last thing I hear is Emmy telling her mom that I said a bad word. I came to in the middle of the road with a foil blanket on and a soft Octonauts toy under my head. I could see lots of blue lights, 3 police cars, and an ambulance. That one was for me. I can also see my neighbors out of the corner of my eye. My hearing returns, and the little girl tells me her little brother volunteered his toy because I hit my head when I fell. Suddenly, I'm up and looking around to count all 5 of the family members and checking for injury. Over the top of their heads, I can see an arm frantically waving in and out of view. Yeah, you guessed it. Moving weirdos broke into my neighbor's house. I see the woman is standing still, her head still slumped to the side just as she's lowered into a police car. I was later told that as I spoke to my neighbors out their bedroom window, their dad had gone to fight the intruders and kicked the woman down the stairs as she was climbing them. The man of the duo was the frantically moving shadow I had seen from the doorway. Police reckon they'd been trying doors up and down our street and finally found one that was unlocked. I then told them about the couple trying our door earlier in the afternoon. At that point, I'm guided to the ambulance and sat on the bed whilst paramedics tend to a large cut on the back of my head from my fall. I vaguely feel them removing gravel, cleaning, gluing and dressing it. But I'm more than preoccupied watching two police try to contain the human dancing inflatable man. They can't catch both arms at the same time to cuff him, so eventually, one policeman is cuffed to one of the man's hands, and thus has his arm flung every which way as the man continues to move. I have no idea what they've been tried with, if they were on drugs, or had a movement disorder. Me and my dad also have a small bet on this matter. I also don't know when the court hearing is yet, but as a key witness, I'll be told when they need me in court. But I would happily go the rest of my life without hearing a child scream at 2 a.m., as well as seeing those weird moving creeps. I'm afraid that my story might not sound as dramatic as others you've heard, but I remember every detail like it happened yesterday, and that's saying something. I was around 11 or 12 years old at the time, just a kid enjoying a summer day at Great America with my older sister. She was about 16 at that point, just old enough to boss me around and more or less get away with it. We had already been on a bunch of rides that day, but there was one I didn't want to try. It was this massive pirate ship that swung like a pendulum, eventually doing full 360-degree loops where riders would hang upside down. My sister kept pestering me to go on it. I kept saying no, but she just kept nudging. Eventually, I gave in, mostly just to stop the nagging. While we were standing in line, we happened to notice this older guy a few people ahead of us. For the sake of the story, we'll call him Carl, which is not his real name. He was being loud, yelling about his favorite sports teams to no one in particular. At first, we just thought he was joking around with a group of girls nearby. But looking back, they didn't seem like they were with him, and they too mostly tried to ignore him. We got on the ride, and sure enough, my sister screamed like crazy the entire time. That was her thing. She said that it made rides more fun for her. I just felt like my stomach was doing backflips, and by the time the ride ended, I was feeling pretty nauseous. As we got off, I noticed the group of girls walking away briskly from Carl, calling him a weirdo. He just stood there grinning, almost as if it didn't bother him at all. Now, we were on this little bridge that overlooked part of the park, and I told my sister that I needed a second. I leaned against the railing, trying my best to get some fresh air. My head was spinning, and I was solely focused on breathing and not puking. When, out of nowhere, I felt two big arms wrap around my waist and lift me straight into the air. My stomach dropped for a whole new reason. For a second, I honestly thought I was about to get thrown over the edge of the bridge. My body locked up, and I couldn't even scream. Just like that, though, I was back on the ground. I spun around to see Carl standing there, smiling like he hadn't just scared the life out of me. My sister rushed over and immediately started questioning this man. "Why did you just pick him up like that?" she asked, putting herself between Carl and myself. "He looked like he was going to be sick," he said, shrugging. "Thought maybe he wanted some air." "Okay, how is lifting someone into the air going to help with that?" But he ignored her and turned back to me. "You doing all right now, buddy?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stared past him, clearly too shaken to respond. "Come on," he said. "Look at someone when they're talking to you. You bored or something? I bet you are. Going on rides with your... what is she? Your friend? Your sister?" He looked at my sister as if trying to size her up. "Doesn't matter what she is. I heard her screaming on that ride. Bet she's not up for anything else scary. Probably ready to call it a day, but not you, right? You've got more in you." My sister cut in. "Leave him alone. What we're doing is none of your business." But Carl just kept on. "No, it is. Everyone who comes to Great America should have a good time. Tell you what, kid, why don't you ditch her and come to the water park with me? She doesn't look like the type to have fun getting wet anyway. But you and me, we'll hit all the water rides. After that, I'll take you out for lunch. Whatever you want, it's my treat." I froze. The hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. My stomach, which was already queasy, twisted in a whole different way. An adult stranger inviting a kid to ditch his sibling and go out to eat? I wasn't naive. I knew this was bad. Potentially really bad. I took a small step to the side, trying to move past him. But Carl shifted slightly, just enough to block my path. We were still on the bridge and I had nowhere to go. My brain was racing and I knew that we needed a way out. So I faked a phone call. I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket and held it to my ear. "Hey, Mom. Yeah, we just got off the pirate ship ride." "Oh, you're by the food court? Okay, me and Sis are on our way now." I made sure Carl heard every word. With that, I gently pushed past him. My sister followed my lead without even saying a word. We didn't run, not yet at least. We kept a steady pace until we turned a corner and were out of Carl's line of sight. Then we sprinted. We ran all the way to the park entrance, only stopping when we reached the front gate. We tried to tell the park staff what had happened, but they just seemed to brush it off. Since this man hadn't technically done anything illegal, they told us that their hands were tied. We didn't even get this man's real name, so aside from a general description, we couldn't give them much. To this day, I think about how that situation could have gone another direction. If I hadn't had the presence of mind to fake that call, or if my sister hadn't been there. Maybe if Carl had just been a little more forceful. It's actually a terrifying thought. Carl didn't take me, but he definitely tried to. So, to the creepy guy who literally picked me up off the ground at an amusement park, let's not meet. Not now, not ever. This takes place about 10 years ago in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm originally from California, so trading out my city life for a less urban lifestyle was pretty challenging for me. Making friends was hard, but I made the move to be with my dad, who lived in an apartment complex with a roommate. My dad was a trucker, so he was gone for weeks at a time, while I was left alone to work and come home to a foreign place that I was slowly becoming accustomed to. The roommate was gone most of the time because he had a girlfriend, and he would leave his dog with me, so I never really truly felt alone in the apartment. I also had an old lady for a neighbor that would come up to check on me too. That's how people were in that area, and I found it kind of endearing how people knew their neighbors. I got to know everyone in my building's name after about 6 months of living there, except for one. There was this guy, I'd say in his early to mid-50s, who lived directly below my apartment. He looked, for lack of a better description, like a creep. He was bald, except for on the sides of his head, which that hair was straggly. He was tall and kind of skinny, had these outdated 90s glasses that you'd see on America's Most Wanted, as well as a thick mustache. He was the only person in the building who wasn't particularly friendly, or at least didn't make the effort to say hello or introduce himself to me. He also happened to be the maintenance man for all 5 buildings in the complex. That part didn't give me much pause at first. I honestly don't care if you're not overtly friendly to me. I enjoy having space of my own, and sometimes being too friendly can come off suspicious. That's just a personal problem for me, but I'm explaining why I didn't send up any red flags at first. One day, when I was pulling out of the driveway to go to work in the morning, I noticed across the large lawn that led to the door to our buildings, the maintenance man was standing in the center, staring directly at me. Stare may actually be the wrong word here, more like glare. At first, I looked around confused, thinking perhaps he was looking at someone or something behind me, but I was the only one there. Although a bit sketched, I shrugged it off and continued about my day, forgetting all about it by the time I clocked out. The next day, I was over at my neighbor Claire's apartment, the older lady that I had mentioned, and she happened to bring up a maintenance issue she had, but mentioned she would never ask the maintenance man for anything, and neither should I. I tried to ask her more about what she meant by that, but she ended up being very broad and said something along the lines of, "Oh, he's just a known creep around here." Well, fast forward to the first incident. It was around 2 a.m. one night, and I was still awake, but only just barely, sitting on the couch watching Parks and Rec alone in the apartment. I was starting to drift off into sleep when I heard a soft noise near the front door. Thankfully, the show was pretty low in volume because normally I don't pick up on quiet noises most of the time. I turned off the TV and began to focus on listening. Next to the living room, on the right side is the patio area, and on the left is the kitchen and the front door. The light from the moon and outside lamps were flooding through the patio glass door, so I could see the doorknob to the front door moving. Not just moving, but clearly someone was using a key. In an instant, the door flung open and I was on my feet, with nowhere to hide at that point. I stood my ground and saw the silhouette step into the kitchen. That's when I saw that it was the maintenance man. My stomach dropped, and he stopped dead in his tracks when he spotted me, looking as if it was unexpected to find me awake. I noticed he had a large coat on, even though it wasn't winter or even particularly cold that night. I noticed that detail only because the jacket looked bulky, as if he were carrying things in it that I couldn't see. "What the fuck are you doing?" was all I managed to squeak out. I was shaking, my knees feeling like they were going to give out. For reference, I'm a 22-year-old woman standing a whopping 5'4", with no way to defend myself at all from where I was standing. He looked shocked, which made me feel like I had gained a little power from the situation. He retorted confusedly and angrily even with, "Your toilet is making a loud noise that I could hear from my bedroom." I found myself both angry and terrified, and only reacted with more anger when I saw him scrambling for excuses. "So you just let yourself into my apartment at 2 a.m? I'm reporting this to management first thing." He stepped closer to me then. I backed up a few steps, but still did my best to hold my ground, quickly turning on the light closest to me so he could see the fury in my face. "The toilet is rumbling. I need to check it. Now." Now I was trembling so hard that I could barely stand. I had adrenaline and anger and fear all coursing heavily through my body. "Get the f*** out." He started to take the liberty to look around the kitchen where he was standing. My head immediately thought, "Shit, what if he goes for a knife?" And that's when he said it. "I can come in whenever I want." The sentence makes me shiver to this day. I didn't know what to do, and felt the power over the situation quickly dwindling down to a bad feeling that something awful was going to happen. "Bro, if you don't get the fuck out of my apartment right now, I'm going to start screaming as loud as I can." I knew my voice was cracking and shaky, which made my heart drop into my stomach. I immediately felt like I was going to be sick when he took yet another step forward towards me. "Check the lease. I can come in whenever I want. I'll see you later." He winked at me, creating this wave of nausea, and I even felt faint. He slowly turned around and walked out, closing the door behind him and even going so far as to lock it from the outside with his extra key. The next day, as promised, I contacted management as soon as the office opened. But straight away, I could tell the conversation wasn't going anywhere when the manager sounded irritated right off the bat. When I told her that the guy entered my apartment illegally, she cut me off and told me that they don't allow any illegal activity, and took what I was saying very seriously. I thought, yeah, I've got him. Until the manager said, "You can't just throw around accusations without proof. This man has dedicated over 20 years to working for this company, and we don't plan on getting rid of him anytime soon. Perhaps if you had read over your lease like you should have." Yeah, this woman was actually scolding me here. then you would have seen the clause that states that a maintenance worker has keys to the entire property. And if there's a maintenance issue, they are permitted to access the property at any time of day. This absolutely floored me. And she had me. I didn't read the lease carefully. When I moved there, my dad was already living in the apartment, and I literally had nowhere else to go. So if I were to be living there, I was going to have to sign the lease no matter what. And that's what I did. Needless to say, nothing got done that day. Fast forward again. A few days go by, and I don't see Mr. Maintenance Freak. Until I do. This time, I'm pulling in after a long 10-hour shift at work. I haven't forgotten about the scary incident, but I had put it in the back of my mind for the time being to concentrate on other things, although I did lose sleep over it. I park my car facing the large lawn area again and start using my phone for a few minutes. I'm peering down at it and glance up for a split second before I see him there. He's standing across the lawn staring angrily at me again. This time, I mean furious. I quickly look back down and pretend to not have seen him, getting that sinking feeling yet again. As a paranoid person, I put the key in the ignition just in case and pretended to keep scrolling on my phone while subtly locking my door. I glance up again, and this time, he's striding right towards me, very fast. I look in my rearview mirror, hoping to see someone else that he may be stomping angrily towards. And of course, there's no one behind me. It's nearly dark out now, but when he gets to about 10, maybe 15 feet away from my car, I can hear him shouting something, although I can't make out what he's saying. Now I put my phone down, and I'm watching him come right at me until he reaches my window and starts banging on it with all of his might. Then he slams his body into the door. He's also fidgeting angrily with the handle, even though my doors are locked. My car doesn't have automatic locks, so I'm praying to God that all my doors are locked at this point. My hands are shaking so bad that I'm having trouble starting the car. And when I finally do, that's when I realize what he's saying, which was a repeated cycle of the following phrases. I'm gonna get you, bitch. I told you I can come in whenever I want. You really want to take me on? I'll fucking kill you. I peeled out of there so fast, not even knowing where to go. I drove to the next county over, found a motel, and stayed there the night. The next day I took off work and went straight to the management's office. I told them exactly what had happened, and no matter what I said, they didn't believe me. This maintenance man was apparently God's gift to mankind or something. He was a monument to the company, and they appreciated his 20 years of service and dedication to them, over him threatening someone's life with his words. Long story short, I lost it. I called the management lady a psychotic and ended up getting evicted. I reported all of this to the police, but between the lack of evidence that I had and his perfect, shining record and references from his employers, the police said there was nothing they could do to move forward. My dad and I ended up finding a nice house about 10 minutes away from that place. I ended up inviting Claire, my older neighbor, to the new house a few months later. That's when she told me that there was a single woman in the apartment before the roommate and my dad had moved in there, and that she also left in a hurry after something happened with the maintenance man. This involved taking photos of her walking to and from her apartment and to her car. When she confronted him about it, he told her, "I can do whatever I want." I guess in Kansas City, maintenance workers are like God. They get away with whatever they want and have shining reputations. I think when it was all said and done, I lasted about 2 years in Missouri. I've been back in California ever since. The resounding lesson that I took from this story was, always be sure to read through your entire lease and rental agreement before you put pen to paper. There's no telling the headache that it could save you down the road.